cameras is this one right here.
Yeah, so that camera right there, straight ahead, is the one we're gonna focus
This is
on.
where y'all
Right
are.
where Dr.
That's
Trask
right here.
is.
Okay.
We're almost at 7:30 mark. Go ahead and shake those jitters off.
Shake, shake, shake.
Everybody.
Shake, shake, shake.
And we're gonna be going live.
All cameras off or on vibrate before we get started?
Oh,
Yes.
I mean, not cameras, but telephones.
Oh,
Yes.
Okay.
My phone is on vibrate. I don't know why people have their phones ringing.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for another episode of Politics and the People. Tonight we are going to have a special show. I felt it was time to go ahead and start this conversation, so here we are. I have three amazing gentlemen with me tonight, and we're going to talk about the LGBTQIA plus community. To my immediate, far left, we got the president of the GLBT Caucus, Mike Webb. Mike, thanks for joining us. To right next to Mr. Webb there, we have Mo Cortez, who is the co-founder of the Houston Intersex Society. And to my immediate left is my buddy, Josh Mica, who is an activist and also the radio show host of Oz Impact.
Yep.
Yes. So we're going to have a conversation tonight to hopefully engage and help others to understand the needs of the community and what we can do to help and open our minds up to the idea of we're all human beings. So, that being said, Mike, tell us a little bit about the GLBT Caucus.
Absolutely. So I'm Mike Webb, President of the Houston GLBT Political Caucus. You can quickly find out more information about us at www.thecaucus.org. And we're the longest and largest now LGBTQ civil rights organization in the entire South that focus mostly on education and advocacy around key issues that impact the LGBTQ community. Now, what I love most about the caucus is it's a membership-driven and volunteer-driven organization, which means I have a lot of people telling me what to do all the time. And at the moment, over 700 people, which is the largest membership we've ever had in our entire history. So naturally, we are going through some beautiful growing pains at the moment, but what is significant about that is we've become way more intersectional in our advocacy and our approach. So in addition to fighting to make sure that we have equal protections from our government, et cetera, that we're also joining movements like the Black Lives Matter movement and the immigration reform movement. And I could talk all day long about the caucus, of course, but ultimately, we're a membership-driven organization passionate about the civil rights of all Houstonians.
Awesome. All right, Mo, tell us a little bit about yourself and the Houston Intersex Society.
Okay, well, I could be here forever, but I'll give you the brief version of this. I'm actually a Houston transplant, so I moved here in 2003. But it was around, I want to say maybe 2012. I was on Facebook and I saw a little thing that said people you might know, and it had my friend there, Kuma, which I knew him through Hatch, like a long time ago. So there was somebody who had sat beside me, every single Friday for this after school program that I sat beside and never knew the other person was intersex. So I reached out to him that day, and we actually founded that very day, 2012, the Houston Intersex Society. We founded it as a peer support organization to let people know that they're not alone and that they have resources and people there to care for them. But we did that for about a year and a half of having weekly meetings. But people didn't want to show up; they just wanted to talk about their story and just go ahead and move on with on their business. But so we eventually ended up evolving to more of an educational organization. So we do a lot of advocacy work, education, and outside of the Houston Intersex Society, we've done a little bit of policy. That's a different arena, but we're pretty much an advocacy support organization.
So real quick, just for those people that may not know what it is, can you define intersex for?
Yeah, so that's all, I always should do that one. So intersex, since most people aren't familiar with what that is, it's whenever someone's born with an anatomical chromosomal or hormonal difference that falls somewhere in between what's usually considered typical for male and female. So people have heard of the word of hermaphrodite, which that doesn't exist. People actually don't have both sexes. To tell you, sometimes you're not born with an ovary, sometimes you're born with maybe even like a micropenis or different varieties, and the frequency of these birds are it's what a conservative number that's thrown out there is like 1 out of every 2,000 birds is intersex. So what that looks like is like twins. They're about as common as twins. So
Josh,
Yes, yes.
tell us a little bit about yourself and your radio show and your activism.
So I started Pause Impact because I'm actually a project lead graduate through the Houston Ryan White Planning Council. And so if people are not familiar with the Project Leap, it's a 17-week intense course that you take for 17 weeks. And they teach you about HIV in Houston, specifically. And as somebody living with HIV, I was not aware of programs such as the Ryan White to help people who are living with HIV. And so really after I got diagnosed, I really found a lot more information. But I was surprised that they've been in existence for a very long time, and really the information is really not out there. And so part of that, one of my guest speakers was Benita, and a lot of people know her, but she's an amazing person, and she just came in and she just delivered a speech. Follow your lane. Everybody has an activist lane. You don't have to be in the front lines. You don't have to be the one getting arrested, but you can be the one providing sandwiches. You can be the one giving money to bail these people out. You can be in the background providing legal services. You can be in the background organizing. Like, it takes a lot of people to do this movement. And I was like, wow, this is I want to do something more as an activist. I want to make sure that people are aware of what's happening in Houston, because Houston does have an epidemic. It's really out of almost every 200 residents, 1 out of every 200 residents in Harris County currently is living with HIV. And we are currently number 12 in the nation. Houston is both the nation for new HIV infections and diagnosis, I should say. But being that said, so Pause Impact started, I didn't realize there was nothing out there media-wise to talk about HIV for people who are living with HIV, can have a resource to kind of guide them through it, as well as to talk about what's happening in Houston regarding the HIV planning, regarding services that they're available to have for free if they're not available to afford it. There's so many different options that there wasn't available, so I started Pause Impact as a nonprofit to help other people living with HIV, their friends and family, because it really affects everybody. It's a community. It's just not one face. It doesn't matter. You can't tell somebody who is living with HIV these days, and HIV is no longer the cause of death. It's something else that causes somebody to die. So people are living with 100 years old now with HIV. So just imagine if somebody's 100 years old today in 2019 who has been living with HIV from day one, and before there was all this medication, before there was talk about a cure, before there was talk about prevention. So when we talk about HIV, we have to talk about prevention. But yes, we'll get more into that. And I'm very passionate about making sure that people know about prevention as well as treatment as prevention.
We can tell, and we appreciate you sharing it with us. So what I want to do, because this episode needs to be informative, so I'm going to ask you guys. So for you guys out there, we have 3 different perspectives, right? We have someone that represents a part of the spectrum that would ultimately, when I see your post, I see where more of recognize us, we're here type post, and we have to be realistic about the amount of new infections of HIV and the availability of medications that are affordable. And so we're going to talk about all those things. So let's talk about this first. So in Houston, there is a nice size LGBTQI community.
Mm-hmm. We have one of the largest LGBTQ communities in the entire nation, which is one of the reasons why we're in the bid, or we're competitive now to host World Pride. World Pride is considering Houston as its next destination for 2023, thanks to Pride Houston.
Somebody was the Grand Marshal of this year's parade.
Yeah.
Who was that?
I happen to be one of the many awesome Grand Marshals this year. I was the gender non-binary Grand Marshal this year.
You were something too.
I was the Grand Marshal of Beaumont Pride.
Explain to us what that meant to you, because what we're talking about is something that a lot of people may not truly understand
Yeah.
of how important that is to the Pride Parade and just the openness now of being able to
Celebrate who we are
Yes,
openly.
absolutely.
That's just a little bit of context, and I'll try to make this very quick. I grew up right here in Houston, 3rd Ward, right off of sophomore and 288. Unfortunately, like so many of us who grew up or who are part of the LGBTQ community, I did not have a home that was accepting of who I am. And so therefore, the only time that I could personally be free and celebrate who I was when I snuck out the house and able to go to Pride. And so Pride was very, very, very special to me since I was a kid. Because it was that once a year, that one time a year that I can just be me without stigma, without discrimination, without feeling like I was letting my parents down. And so when Pride, and when the community, because it was the community voted on who their grand marshals were going to be. When the community selected me to be their gender non-binary grand marshal, it was a very emotional experience for me because it was validated all the 18 years I felt like I could not be accepted by my family, and also the years that it took me to finally accept and love myself, which was another 2 to 3 years after turning 18, to see the community embrace all of who we are. It was the most diverse slate of grand marshals in the history and the entire history of the Pride celebration here in Houston. I think we had more black grand marshals than we ever had historically in one parade. And that was the community selecting that. And so I don't know if folks are familiar, but oftentimes, especially as black and brown LGBTQ community members, we are not really fully able to exist in either community, meaning in the black community we're not necessarily accepted holistically, in the LGBTQ community we're not necessarily accepted holistically. Because of racism and because of homophobia. And to see the 4th largest Pride celebration in the entire nation saying, our black and brown community leaders, and they did an honorary grand marshal this year to recognize our local transgender warriors as well.
Yes.
And they were at the front, they led the parade. It provided a model, not just our nation to follow, but for the world to follow.
And I like that. So for those that don't understand gender non-binary, what does that mean?
So one, we've always existed. So I don't want people to. I've heard commentary that didn't exist till Obama got into office. He just changed everything. And, blame everything on Obama, even after he's not in office anymore. That's typical white people stuff. Anyways, I can say stuff like that on here, right? Yeah. The truth is, those of us who identify as gender non-binary has always exist. And oftentimes that come in a form of not conforming to either gender. Meaning, when you were born, the doctors assign you a gender. They either classify you as a male or they classify you as a female. And mostly based off of what they see as your genitalia.
Yes.
What we're saying is, at least those of us who identify as gender non-binary, is that we don't exist on either spectrum. And we either exist somewhere in between that spectrum, or we don't accept that as an identity at all, right? So completely outside the box. And so for many of us, that could come off with how we express our gender, or this is basically how we just want to be identified. And I think the most important message I try to communicate around being gender non-binary is to just simply respect how people want to identify and how people want to be referred to. So my personal pronouns are they, them, their. And I let everyone know that, including those at work. And even if someone does not quite understand the gender aspect of that identity, right? At the very least, you want to treat people humanely and with dignity. And if someone's saying, this is how I need to be treated humanely, I would respect that.
So the reality of what you're saying is, treat me as a human being.
Correct.
I agree. I think that we put a lot of emphasis on race and a lot of emphasis on sexuality or and many other things that a lot of times puts us in a box and isolates us when we should be focusing on our commonalities. What makes us alike? What even makes us the same? Mm-hmm. And so I appreciate you enlightening us on that. Mo, I'll have to ask you because, like I said earlier, when I see your post, I see someone that really wants to be acknowledged. And like anyone else, like you said earlier, people of color in the community tend to be ostracized in many cases because of racism and discrimination. What is it that you believe, or is a better way that we can see in the intersex community that would help more that are hiding in shadows or feel like they can't come forward and be seen and acknowledged? What can you help us to understand about the community, or that spectrum in particular, that can help us but more to understand what the needs are?
That's a multi-billion-dollar question. But some people don't want to come out as intersex because they want the privacy. They don't want to be like thought of as something different, or thought of like, oh, maybe they're born in between, or born this way, or born that way. I think a lot of it comes down to is just like Mike was saying, just like see where people are at, meet them where they're at, and kind of like if they're able to come out, they're able to come out. But I think a lot of it has to do with more of intersex advocates who kind of partnering with LGBT community in general and working more closely with other people. There's so many solutions for that. There's so many solutions that it's really a tough question to answer.
Yeah. I'd apologize. My biggest thing is I just want to make sure that you have the opportunity to speak and be heard and acknowledged, because we as people of color, you can truly attest to the same, like a lot of people say, well, they don't understand what it's like to be black. I understand the discrimination, the hate, and because it happens to you. And you just said it happens even in the community in itself. How do we get past that? How do we build those bridges to align better as human beings so we can stop being afraid to come?
Well, Mo is underselling himself. He helped file one of the first intersex bills in the state of Texas to help address this very thing. And I would argue that it starts with education, right? And Mo is one of the biggest cheerleaders as you learn yourself, right? Forcing us to be more educated around intersex issues. And to give Mo credit, even the LGBTQ community, unintentionally, I would argue, erased intersex from our movement. And it constantly does. And Mo is constantly there reminding us, saying, hey, do the right thing.
Yes.
And so that's...
And they listen.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the type of person we all need to be. We all need to say, hey, stop.
Yeah.
I recognize this group of people over here. They deserve it. Listen to them, let them be heard, and then try to understand and stop isolating people. One of the biggest things, Josh, is that there's still a big stigma about HIV diagnosed individuals, and how you can, how it's transmitted. And so I still see people that, oh man, I don't know who wants to use a bathroom. All these people walking around doing all these gay things, and they're probably spreading this, and it's like, are you stupid? Like, why so ignorant? The words that you hear, because people are not educated, and a lot of it is based upon their unwillingness to allow themselves to be educated, to ask the right questions. Like you said, about how you feel like a lot of people don't want to come out from the shadows because they feel they'll be, looked at differently. And I think that some people actually would love to sit here and watch this and go, okay, great, I don't want to ask that question, because of the fear. Could you imagine somebody coming up to you and say, hey, I'm trying to understand the LGBTQ community. Can you help me? I want to ask you some questions.
They come up to me all the time with us. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
People.
And that's perfectly okay. I don't believe you can really blame people for having false opinions or ideas if you're not willing to engage and talk with them.
Yes.
So you're open to someone saying, hey, man, I
appreciate the people that took the time out of their lives to educate me on various issues, including our trans community, who constantly educate me on the complexity and identify as part of the trans community. But it takes all of us, right, to finally get it right. And so who am I to blame someone else who said, hey, I just want to get it right, and so can I ask these questions? They may sound very elementary or they may sound very expert level, but you have the right to ask questions to gain clarification, and I want to put myself in a position to help educate.
We appreciate that.
And meet people where they are.
I appreciate that. That speaks volumes, Mike. Because I'm the type of person too where when people would say, hey, Anton, can I I ask you a question? And I'm like, okay, it's gonna be.
I mean, you have to always
It's
be
gonna,
like,
it's gonna be about. Yeah, it's gonna be about. You know, it's gonna be about black people, and
Yeah.
and you're like, okay. Exhales, just in
Yeah.
case it's a crazy question, but like you said, you have to. Okay, let's have this dialogue, because maybe I can help change this person's perception, and they'll go home and change their family's perception, and so forth and so on. And so, kudos to you for being open to that dialogue. Hopefully, it's the same way with everybody here, because I think it's important. If we want to move forward and we want to stop the ignorance and the ignorant comments, we have to be open to have those conversations freely and without judgment, and say, yes, hey, by the way, hey, if I sneeze on you right now, you're not going to die tomorrow, type things. And so, Josh, you decided to be a voice for people living with HIV. Tell us a little bit about your experience as far as the affordability of the medication, the stigmas that you may have, the things that you've heard from people, or how family reacted, things like that.
So I'm actually recently diagnosed. So I just got diagnosed about a year ago. My T cell, I got diagnosed with advanced HIV, which is a T cell count of less than 30, and mine was 9 at the moment. And so it took me. I had no idea what to do. I was told to go to Legacy, and I had no income, so I was like, my first thought was go to county, because I know county provides care. And so I Googled hospitals, and I ended up going to Thomas Street for my care. And after being enrolled, it took about 3 months from start to finish. This was a year ago. Things have changed a lot drastically now from then, but it took 3 months, for me to see my physician, and then it took another 2 weeks for me to get my medication. So at a T cell count of 9, I could have died at any moment, And my doctor was like, "Wow, I can't." When we took my blood, she's like, I should be admitting you in the hospital at the moment. Like, you should be in ICU. I'm like, I feel okay. I'm okay. I'm surviving. Just keep me on medication. Like, now that I know that I have this, and I guess I was in denial for so long because I really didn't know what was going on with my body. And that's the thing is not having insurance. I left the business world and started my own business, and so I didn't have insurance. So thinking that there was nothing, I called the major tests that I knew, and they're like, "Oh, it's going to cost $400 or $500." Who has $500 to pay for a test? When in reality, I could have gone to maybe a club, or I could have gone to Avenue 360 or Legacy or even Thomas Street, that they provide testing for free. But this is not available to people. People are not aware that unless you have HIV, unless you know somebody who has HIV. Even though you may know somebody who has HIV, but you may not know what their care status is. And so there's a lot of information that people are not aware, and that was my point of view as well too. I'm like, there's so much information that is out there, yet nobody is aware of it. Nobody knows that it kind of exists. That there's a way for treatment, and also living in I live in Third Ward, and so living there, I don't really have a clinic around me, so not having a good transportation was very unuseful for me. So taking the bus, trying to go to Thomas Street, take the bus was a nightmare. So I just ended up taking Uber, $15 cab ride, and I was having to see my doctor once a month, and me being there for the Legacy, me being there, not Legacy, but it was at Thomas Street, but there for 4 or 5 hours at a time every month. I'm like, I work, I have to pay my bills. If I'm not working, I don't get paid, So that was my, now things have drastically changed, and they're looking to implement when you get diagnosed, you get treated, you get diagnosed, and you get prescription right there and then, and you walk out with medication. They're actively working on this right now. It takes a week to get medication, which is very much than my 3 months it took me for seeing a doctor. That you see the physician the same day that you arrive. So a lot of things has changed, but people are not aware that things are getting better. So when people say, "Oh, our healthcare really sucks," yes, it does suck, but things are improving. The county is improving, and I see it just being there, going there, and seeing my physician. Now I'm happy to say that I'm undetectable for 6 months now. It's been a very vigorous process, but I'm very active about U equals U. Undetectable means untransmittable, and I had somebody come up to me just recently, and we were discussing. He was a Arab gay guy, and lots of money, just. And I was like, he's like, oh, I don't know. We were talking about on my podcast or my my radio show, Positive Impact. And he's like, I don't know anybody with HIV. I'm like, well, now you do. And he's like, oh, I thought you could get it by kissing. I was like, no. Let me educate you on how you can get this, and it's only by sexual contact. That is me having a virus that is not suppressed, and if it is unsuppressed, then making sure that you know what you're doing. So wearing a condom, if you're doing that route, making sure that you are on PrEP if you are negative, asking questions, show me your status. Like everybody's like, oh, I'm negative. Just trust me. Trust is a lot to think when it's to your health.
In your life.
And your life.
Yes.
So you want to make sure, what I want to make sure is to get across is it get treated. If you have not gotten an HIV test in the past 3 months, get an HIV test.
Yes.
If it's been 6 months, you definitely need to get. If it's been a year, you better go see your doctor and get an HIV. And if you're negative, you're negative.
Yeah.
But if you're positive, get on treatment immediately.
Yes.
Because that's the only way we're gonna help spread the disease. The infection rates. It's because of somebody who is positive, who is not on treatment, passing to somebody who is negative, and that's how it all equates. But we see we had on our show on Monday we talk about HIV is a racist disease because it really affects the people of color more than it affects anybody else, and that is intentionally. I feel like as well too when we were talking about it and how they were explaining it. We see it as poor people are more affected than the rich people.
Do you think? Let me stop you right there because
Because if I had insurance on a daily basis, I could have got to my physician, every 2 months or
So
every
you're
month.
saying that the racist portion of it is based upon the
Probably.
the financial demographics of a
Yes.
specific community. So let's say if you have low income black communities whatnot in the area where
There's social determinants of health, and that's with any chronic illnesses. So like diabetes is a great example as well. Like those who have the least access to health are the most impacted by communal diseases and public health crises like HIV.
Yeah.
So those of us who have to depend on public transportation, those of us who have wage-oriented jobs, or you get paid by the hour, for example, are less likely to be able to get into quality health care that can treat their diabetes, that can treat their HIV status, which requires a higher viral load, which will make you more contagious to other people, and therefore spread it easier to community members who you happen to make love with. And yes, Josh is absolutely right. The black and brown communities are disproportionately impacted by HIV. I don't know if the virus itself is racist, although in America a lot of things can be racist. So,
I just feel like the way that it
how
interacts,
society is already
Yes.
socially structured contributes to bad things impacting black and brown communities harder than it does white people. Because when a white, well-off gay man becomes HIV positive, he most likely has easier access to health to take care of it and live a very, very profitable and long life. While, as you heard from Josh, who's someone who has like coming from a working class environment, and that definitely primarily impacts black and brown people, have those less opportunities to do that.
Okay. Yeah, and that's what I thought he was saying, and a lot of times we have to stop and go back and clarify to make sure that we're spreading the right message. It's very disparaging when you think about it, right? You think about all the people that are underinsured, and I talked to someone a while ago, and they were telling me about the process of how expensive the medication is, and how it's just the prices just seem to be like skyrocketing. Think about the EpiPen was what, $50? Now it's $500. Life-saving medicines and treatments are very costly. Look at cancer. Cancer is the moneymaker. You get diagnosed with cancer, and next thing you know, doctors are clapping. You get that Rolls Royce or that Bentley now because I have another patient to treat. And so, what do you guys think would best serve any community? Because HIV, let's be real, HIV and AIDS it does not discriminate. Whether you are part of the community, whether you are straight, whatever, you can still contract HIV and AIDS. And we need to be clear. Do you feel like we need more education, like in schools, to help young people understand the risk? Do you think that we need more clinics in the community where people can go freely and get those HIV tests? Because like you said, well, you said there's no clinic in your area, which means you may need to, travel. Some people don't feel comfortable with going to have that test done because they fear that people are going to look, hey, such when I saw him going in the HIV testing clinic. And you know how people are.
Well, I would immediately recommend to check out Legacy Community Health Services. Legacy Community Health is, and I don't work for them. This is not a plug.
No commercials.
This is no, yes, right. It's an FQHC, a Federal Qualified Health Center. So therefore, you cannot be denied care based off of your income. And the beautiful thing about Legacy is like they treat all hosts of types of illnesses. So if you go to a Legacy clinic, you're not, like you could be HIV positive, you could not. So if you have that fear of like being associated with the stigma of HIV, you can still have a safe space to still get treatment, or to get tested, or to find things out on any other types of STDs, STIs, or illnesses. And what I would say is that the Legacy has a very culturally competent environment, based off of income and based off of if you're part of the Black community, LGBTQ community, or all of the above. You can find empowerment, and that's one of the areas that I would argue for our elected officials to take more of an aggressive stance on, is to make sure that opportunities like Legacy Community Health are more funded on a local level. The hard part is that we depend on federal funding for our HIV prevention and empowerment services. And the federal government these days are operating off of tweets, and who knows what new policies are coming from them these days. But we have an experience. For example, we are late to the game with fighting HIV within the trans community because the CDC did not even classify transgender individuals in their grants. And so for a long time, a lot of testing agencies were inappropriately testing transgender individuals because their grant did not cover that, but they still made sure that they get tested, of course, right? If we had local funding, for example, if the city of Houston would finally provide funding from its city budget to provide us the flexibility to do what we know works to stop HIV in its tracks right here in Houston, I would guarantee you that you would see a decrease in transmissions and a greater access to treatment for those of us already living with HIV. However, right now, we're very, very dependent on the CDC and the federal government, whatever constraints they have for us in that moment to operate within. And then, to the best of our abilities, wiggle our way into effective ways of fighting back.
Do you feel like, because one of the big ticket things during President Obama's presidency was the Affordable Care Act. And then the ability or the inability for insurance companies to deny you due to pre-existing conditions. A lot of people still talk about Obamacare, we got to get rid of Obamacare, it's a horrible thing, and this, that, and other. Would you, supporting the fact that the pre-existing condition thing was a big deal? I mean, it was huge because previously, hey, you got that, no, we're not going to.
You know how many of us have pre-existing
Yes.
conditions regardless of HIV status?
It could be high blood pressure, diabetes, lupus, it could be.
Pregnancy.
Yeah.
Being born.
Yeah.
Yes,
I mean, if
it was everything.
You said pregnancy, and then when I think about looking at those medical bills from when my children were born, and I look at what they paid, I'm like, oh wow, I need to be a doctor. Or anesthesia, or the anesthesiologist, or the person that does the epidural or whatnot, and then you look at those bills and you're like, Jesus. And you kind of understand why the insurance company's like, well, man, we're going to have to pay for that. Oh, they just got a job, new insurance, we're going to pay for that. But the realization is, when you think about it, there's a lot of people that would be left outside of that ability to get that life-saving medication to ultimately put themselves in a predicament to be undetectable and in a position where it's untransmittable. If they were not able to get medication, ultimately could be in ICU.
So, like right now there is availability to get medication a lot of like Gilead and other pharmaceutical companies are offering medication free. But you take the medication, you still have to get your blood test. So who's going to do your blood test? If you can get your medication for free, but what good does your medication do if you don't know if it's actually working? So you still have to come out of pocket for your blood test. So it's just another impediment. So when we talk about medication, yes, it's great that we can get access to medication, but what happens to before that, or what happens during that? You have to pay for your doctor's office visit. You have to pay for your lab test. You have to pay for and then so now your prescriptions are free. Well, what happens to my other $1,000 that I just went down the drain for everything else that I don't have money to cover for? So Texas has not expanded the Medicaid, the new Medicaid through for everybody to access it, which is very important because Houston does not provide funding, but this administration, the current administration, has provided Congress with a very large sum amount of money to provide funding to combat HIV for 2030, and part of that is they're going to give money to quality funding facilities like Legacy, like Avenue 360, or St. Hope that is available. They're all qualified facilities. You can all get tested there for free. You can all do, and it's all services that I had no idea. It's just not Legacy. That is out there. That there's like three other facilities that cover Houston. So that's important. We're talking that they're going to get funding to get that testing, to provide that treatment to the physician, to people who are not HIV infected. So that right now, if you're infected with HIV, you can get care. You can get your doctor's visits covered for free through Ryan White. You can get your lab tests covered for free through Ryan White. You can get your prescriptions covered for free through Ryan White. If you don't have HIV, you can only get a test currently. So the money is coming in to provide people.
There are opportunities to get PrEP as well, and even if you're from a low-income background or from a working class background, there are agencies, including Legacy Community Health. I can't vouch for Avenue 360 because allegedly, according to social media, they are transphobic. Just to put that out there, but so that's why I'm very careful with what I do recommend. But it is possible to get PrEP, and PrEP is pre-exposure prophylaxis, which for you don't know what that means yet. It's a pill you can take once a day if you're HIV negative. That as all studies show that it's literally, if you take it as prescribed, it's almost impossible to contract HIV. So therefore, if you were to have, for example, I'm not encouraging this, and nor would I say you should do this, but you to have condomless sex, that means sex without a condom, with someone who happens to be living with HIV, and if you're on PrEP and taking it as prescribed, which is once a day currently, in that situation, you would still not become HIV positive. That's how effective PrEP is. And it's accessible based off of your income level, you can get it almost for free, still have to pay for labs, from places like Legacy Community Health and other places that are providing.
Now, question, because that opens a different can of worms for a lot of people. Then we have to be clear that a lot of people, open-mindedness and things like that. So is that available to anyone?
To anyone.
Okay, so now, next question. Because a lot of people will, what's stopping someone from going to get it to allow themselves to live a reckless lifestyle without fear?
I personally don't judge people's sexual behavior, but I will say that if the number one concern is to help stop HIV, now it does not stop you from getting like syphilis or chlamydia and all the host of other very dangerous and problematic STIs and STDs. However, the life-threatening one, HIV, is very, very effective. And it's still recommended to use condoms and other safer sex practices. It's one item out of an entire toolkit that we can use. And I'm the type of advocate that believes in giving the community as many options as possible to combat HIV, and not limit it based off of my own personal judgment and stigma.
Hey, I can roll with that. That's a big deal, and I just wanted to be clear because
and I want to be clear.
you got a lot of people that are just going to say, "Well, he's just saying that because."
Right.
Because once again, the thing is, it's a lifestyle choice.
Yeah.
That's what you hear, right? Like, you stop trying to shove your lifestyle down our throats. So let's talk about that.
Okay.
Because I want to be clear to a lot of people from what I've learned from my own experience. I was a person that branched out and asked questions because I did not know. For the record, I grew up in the South, Southern Baptist Church, and they preach against anything outside of man and woman having a relation. And so you grow up with that mentality that this is wrong, this is bad, and God's gonna punish, those people for that. And then you start to see it hit close to home. You have family members, you have a child that tells you one day, this is me. And so you have to wake up really fast and start to try to come to grips with it in a way that allows you to still be the loving parent or family member or friend that you need to be to support the person that willing to come to you and say, hey, this is me. So that being said, what would you say to people who believe that the community is ultimately trying to force the rest of the world to believe in or come to grips or have mad love for?
So by the community, I just want to be very, very clear about this. By the community, you mean the LGBTQ community is forcing our way of life.
That's what word on the street is.
Other people. Okay,
Yes.
The word on the street is, I don't know too many other people other than black and brown people who get disproportionately arrested, disproportionately homeless, disproportionately impacted by communal diseases, than the LGBTQ community. So when folks are saying that we're shoving our way of life down their throats, what we're really doing is fighting for a way to live, and fighting for a way to have an equal and equitable way to live as everyone else. Oftentimes, we get annoyed when we're hearing the voices who we don't want to hear from, and that's what the source of that is. Like, you want us to just shut up, right? And there's in the black community, and we have to be very, very honest about this, we're going to get anywhere around this issue. We expected our brothers and sisters and our sons and daughters and those of us in between to just not talk about it. We all knew they were a little sugar in the tank, a little sweet, what other words we would describe our family members, but we never really concretely usually talk about it. And what's birthed from that is this expectation that we're supposed to remain silent. I don't see heterosexual couples remaining silent. I see them holding hands and loving and expressing their love. And I think what we're trying to fight for is that have the same right that everyone else has.
I like that. And that's what I want to hear. That's what I wanted people out there to hear. Because you said some key things about, because I remember people saying that you got a little sugar in the tank and stuff like that. There was
They're talking about me. Yeah.
So in Kansas City, my mother bought a home in a community where most of the people that lived in that community grew up there. And now they're adults and they were raising their children there. And so there was a young man I grew up with, Nick, but they called him Little Nicky.
Mm-hmm.
And we would play basketball in the backyard. They had a garage that had a basketball goal on it. Little Nick would come play basketball with us just like any other boy, and he can shoot, and he would take you out of your shoes. But then there was also a time when we were playing basketball back there, and little Nick was up front with his female cousins dancing, and dancing in a way that most would consider not how
Not masculine.
Yes, and so, but I would tell you that you didn't see him in a different light, and that's why I get kind of upset when I see people kind of take it there, because he was an amazing person. And I say was because unfortunately, after I moved to Arizona a few years in, I found out that he had passed away. He had succumbed to HIV, and it was unfortunate because he's an amazing spirit, right? Amazing person, and could fight. People need to get that. We need to get that clear when we're picking on the wrong person, because but he was an amazing person. And so when I look back, I go, for all this time, we were sitting there and we were not talking to him to ask him the questions that maybe we could have helped prevent him from going to the point where he ended up, not to redirect where he was going, but ultimately to help inform him about the fact that
So that you appreciate him holistically for all of who he is, and not just for the part that can shoot a ball.
Nick was amazing, man. And I see his father when I go back to Kansas City, and I talk to him for a long time because I miss seeing little Nick, and just enjoying all of him. And that's what I think we need to do. We need to start to look more beyond where we're not comfortable and what we don't like, and and try to find things that can help us engage better. And I appreciate you guys coming, because these are conversations we need to have. And people need to come out of their comfort zone and stop slamming their Bible across people's head and saying, you know, hey, what you're doing is wrong. Well, I can name a whole bunch of things you're doing wrong too, but what does that do for us?
And I would also just argue, imagine the world that we can live in if we all started working together instead of fighting each other, right? Imagine what we can really, truly accomplish. I just have a dream, and I'm not talking about be like Martin Luther King type of dream, 'cause that's a huge dream, right? I'm talking about I literally have a sort of a passion, a mission. How about this? A mission. And the rest of the nation don't have to follow this, but Houston, I think we have the right ingredients to do it. Imagine when the LGBTQ community, it don't have to be in this order, the black community, the Latinx community, those of us who do not have the income to afford to donate to campaigns, right, all start working together with similar agenda items and saying, you know, we're collected and we're working together as a coalition to fight for all of our human rights. Imagine what we really could accomplish with that. City council, the governor, no one can say no to that type of coalition.
Nope.
But it's easier to say no to us individually when we're fighting each other and them.
You said a big word that I used when I decided to run, and I told people, I said, we need to start a coalition. I've seen it work in other places. Because think about it, the few versus the many. Like you said, individually, when I tell people, they say, well, you know, you can still do the same work. You don't have to be a politician. I said, here's the difference between being an individual and a politician. If I'm the mayor, if I'm the governor, if I'm whatnot, if I make a phone call to a rep or a senator or the president, and I'm a seated politician, my calls get returned or my email gets answered. It should be the same way as an individual. We know that it doesn't always work that way. If we have more people beating the streets for the child jail around the corner on Emancipation Avenue, if we could get half of the almost 4 million people in the city of Houston to come out and line that street to protest that location being there, what could we accomplish? We have 5,000 police officers in the city of Houston, HPD. 1.82 million people lining the streets. That makes a bigger statement. And we need not just do that because of our own personal causes, right? Because a lot of us are stuck in our own personal cause, like, well, you know, well, that's not affecting me, so why should I get involved in that? No, you should. It doesn't matter if you're whatever you claim, whatever you are, what your religious background, whatever political party you're a part of. Right is right and wrong is wrong. And we need to identify those issues and then stand against what's wrong together. So that's realistically why I want you guys to come on tonight, to make this show about something that matters, right? You do matter. You matter to me. Everything about you matters to me. Whether you know, intersex or, you know, LGBTQI, we have to, and the initialisms it's growing.
LGBTQIA+.
Yes. Hey, somebody, for those that don't know, why don't you break down what those individual letters, the initials stand for?
Oh, wow.
Come on.
Google.
Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, IA.
I don't like.
I don't know about
Plus, and we add plus, right?
Yeah,
and
plus.
so I personally use queer, because I consider queer as an umbrella for everything, but I think it's generally safe to say LGBTQIA. Some people say LGBTQ+. I think the ultimate goal is that, like, the LGBTQ+ community is an umbrella community.
Yeah, to say
that pretty
you're
much
included.
The only thing ideally is intolerated in our community is intolerance.
Josh, man, you talked about status and care, the programs available out there, which is, we're glad you're able to speak to that, because there's a lot of people, I'm sure, that if they are not, you know, privy to those programs, they are now, those resources. Mo, you spoke to the intersex community. And I want to ask you a little bit more, and then I want to talk about something. Well, let's do this. Let's talk about this first, because this is a big deal. This is happening across the country, and it's very irritating. And if it doesn't make people mad right now, I have to question if you're a human being or not. So, what, as of late, we've been having a lot of deaths amongst
Black
transgender.
trans women.
What do you feel like we are? Because you talked about earlier how ultimately you have had to be a little bit more educated to the transgender community and their needs and
We all have to be.
yeah. What do you think we need to, what do you think we have to do next to try to help protect those that identify within them?
We have to shut down verbal violence or rhetoric that is not healthy for our community. That encourages physical violence, right? And so I'm gonna try to make this an analogy. I know it annoys some of us black people when we do this, but I'm gonna do it anyways. We always say that white people, when we're not in a room and they hear some racist theme, that if they're truly an ally to, or if they're truly an ally to the black community, they should stand up and stop it. And they should speak up about it. How many of us, when we hear very ignorant comments about our transgender brothers and sisters, stop it, take this room to Google, because everything's available on Google now, to educate them on the reality of what it means to be a trans person, even within the LGBTQ community. And so when we're allowing people to say things like a man in a female dress or the predators, right? There's a false rhetoric that is only meant for fear mongering, quite frankly, by two white pastors in Houston who just want to donate to people's campaigns. And they take advantage of black and brown communities' ignorance around the issue to mobilize them. We need to stop that. And I think that's the first step, to educate ourselves, educate each other, and to stop poisonous rhetoric. I can name some key people who contribute to that. Councilmember Kubash is one of them. Councilmember Knox is another one.
Hey, you know, if you got any more names, because we got time now. You know, the realization is, and I believe in calling people out. I do, because you can't. What happens is you're protecting those people if you not speak against those injustices or those behaviors, right? If when you know somebody is sitting there perpetuating negativity and hate against others, I think it's important that you should speak up and say, hey, look, no, that's not appropriate. And also, if you continue, I'm going to let everyone else know that that's what you're about. So that way we don't keep electing the same people, because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different end result.
And the last thing is to hire black trans women. Like, pay them, like, give them a check, like, for work that they're doing. Because oftentimes, many of our trans communities are forced, because they're not able to get a job that they deserve, to do street economics, which is of course more dangerous and puts you in more in situations that encourages violence.
When you say street economics, for those that do, I know what you're saying, but for those that do not truly understand, because we have to be real.
Yes, well, it includes sex work, it includes other things that we cannot necessarily write off on our taxes or put as a job on our taxes. And I'm saying that if we invest in our communities, especially the communities that oftentimes get targeted the most, with equitable and deserving jobs, because we all just want to work hard to live a life that we deserve to live like everyone else at the end of the day, you will see less and less violence towards those people. So they have the resources to protect themselves.
I'd agree. I think everyone, well, Texas law does allow you to protect yourself very well. We just need to, once again, identify and know those laws. And what's been happening is very saddening. I will look at the news, and then I see the posts from all of you. If you're not familiar with Mike and Mo and Josh, I would definitely say follow them if that's okay.
Yes.
On Facebook, you know, get to know them, ask questions. Mike said that he'd be more than willing to answer your questions to help you be more understanding and knowledgeable of the LGBTQ community and the needs, you know. I think that one of the things that I'm very encouraged about is the courage that I see from you guys. To be able to come here on this platform and say, here it is, I'm HIV positive, I'm intersex, there are people like me, but there's fear coming forward to, out of fear of being ridiculed or seen in a different light. And Mike, taking on, I mean, because I watched let's talk about 1969, Stonewall Inn.
Mhm.
You know, ultimate situations that help to create the movement.
Yeah. I thought about a black and a brown person. They got erased for almost 40 years until now. Yeah.
And so we have to look at those things. Historically, the fight has always been on, but it's progressing.
It is. You know, I would argue that we're in a better place now. But we have a long, long way to go. And Houston, for the progressive and the most diverse city in the nation that it is, we still don't have any laws locally that protects all of us.
You're talking about a non-discrimination
a
ordinance.
non-discrimination ordinance.
The bathroom bill.
I would never call it the bathroom.
Yeah, that was it's kind of like
or-
Obamacare
yes.
to ACA, to the Affordable Care Act.
Correct. I'm not going to use the language of the oppressor, but I will say that that is a signifier, as an example of how much further we have to go.
I agree. And we're coming back around for time for another vote.
Yeah.
And what do you think? Do you think we'll get this time around?
If you go to www.thecaucus.org and support the awesome pro-equality people that we are encouraging folks to vote for, I'm pretty sure we'll have a non-discrimination ordinance that protects all of us within the next 2 to 3 years.
And I want to be clear.
If we elect the right people.
Yeah, a lot of people thought that the ordinance would only protect the LGBT community, but it was ultimately a non-discrimination bill that benefited all.
And actually, the local data showed that it was actually most cases that were addressed when the brief time the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance was being enforced were based off of race. Most. So that means that's black, brown people that are primarily benefit from a local equal rights ordinance. That being said, we still have the right, especially since we are the most diverse city in America, and we proclaim that. We put that in almost every material. And so if you want to put that as a badge of honor of who we are, we need to protect everybody who comes into our city because of that. It's also become the most inclusive city, not just the most diverse.
Can I say something real quick? When you say 2 to 3 years, that means a whole nother election as well too.
No,
Right.
I mean after this election, but you also have to do the work to actually make something happen.
And also you have
That's
the
what people don't
primaries in
realize.
March where you can get the people in place to actually vote for push a bill to the lieutenant governor to ultimately do it on a bigger scale. He had some wins in Commissioner's Court. He had a win there.
We just had a win
And
at the
one in
Harris
Fort
County
Bend.
Commissioner's Court, and then we had one yesterday in Fort Bend.
Yes, with the merchant.
Yes,
Yes.
because of Fort Bend Commissioner Ken the Merchant, and it actually is one of the most inclusive county non-discrimination policies in the entire state. They went further than even Harris County. Not in case we're getting competitive, Harris County could step theirs up a little bit more now too, because it also includes gender expression, which means if I want to express my real gender at work, I cannot get fired just based off of that. But it also included veterans, it included those of us who are pregnant, and those are items that also need protections, right? And so like when we talk about non-discrimination policy, it goes beyond what you hear just in the media or that one particular pastor that likes to bash gay people.
Yeah, there's probably a couple of them. So we're almost out of time. What I want to do is I want to give you the opportunity to throw 1 minute spiel. Maybe you can look right there and tell people how to get in contact with you, what's most important to you, and we'll pass it on.
What's most important to me is that we all work together for progressive values to fight for human lives right here in Houston. You can get in contact with me on Twitter at MCWebbJr, or you can visit www.thecaucus.org, or you can email me at info@thecaucus.org.
Mo.
Yes, you can find me on Facebook. Just type in Mo Cortez. If you want to look up stuff for the Houston Intersex Society, also look us up on Facebook. And since we're doing a little wish list, if Harris County wants to develop a gender team staff with intersex people of color like myself and Kuma to help advise about these non-consensual genital surgeries on intersex infants, feel free to reach out to us because we definitely would love to do that.
And I'm Josh. I'm with Positive Impact, Houston's first radio show dedicated to people living with HIV, their friends and family, on Real Talk 100 Radio. Listen to us every Monday from 7:30 to 9:30 Central Standard Time, and follow us on YouTube as well too on Positive Impact and Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're everywhere under Positive Impact.
Well, guys, I thank you for coming out, and hopefully this has provided some additional dialogue and information for people out there. We thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate the opportunity. If you have any additional questions, you can email them to us at politicsandandtp@gmail.com. Guys, I really appreciate you coming out. Thank you for joining us. It's been another episode of Politics and the People. Thank you for joining us.